3 years ago, on this very day, I lost my first friend to AIDS. Since that day, there have been many others. We, you and I, have had a long and arduous journey these past years. Yet despite the great losses in life that we have suffered, I hope that you, as well as I, can say to all those who oppose us, we will survive.
Memorial Day 1986. San Franciscans gather to remember those who died battling AIDS. The toll has been high. More than 4,000 in San Francisco have been diagnosed with the disease. Half of them have died. Gay and bisexual men make up 97% of all AIDS cases in San Francisco. At least half of the 70,000 gay men who live in the city have been exposed to the virus. AIDS has brought dramatic change to San Francisco's gay community. This is the story of how that community has learned to cope. Gays began settling in San Francisco in large numbers following World War II. By the 1970s, the Castro district was renowned as the gay Mecca.
The gay movement here was known as larger and more politically effective than elsewhere. It was clearly the place where it was easiest to live one's life as an open lesbian or an openly gay man.
There was an excitement about having some political influence in the politics of San Francisco, which really set a sense of pride for people to feel like they can step forward, they have some power, and they could be noticed and have some influence in the overall structure of the city.
This was one of the more wonderful places to be. It seemed like there was a lot of positive images of people who were lesbian or gay.
I was proud to be a gay man in San Francisco. There was a tremendous electricity in the air. It was amazing. For the first time, we could walk down streets and see other people like us. And it was okay, and we could smile and meet people that had come from all over the world.
For many gay men, life in the 70s centered on bars and bathhouses, places where they could meet and celebrate their newfound sexual freedom without fear.
We're talking about people growing up in their teenage years, being told that what they were feeling was bad. All of a sudden, to be able to tell each other that what we're feeling is good and it makes us feel good, I think it's just a huge release.
It was insane. It was wonderful. It was like being a kid in a candy store. It was incredibly open. I felt an incredible sense of freedom.
It was pretty much that way as far as being able to meet people in a variety of different places and get involved in sexual encounters, whether they were outdoors, indoors, bathhouses, movie houses. I mean, people tend to be out and cruising almost everywhere.
But AIDS changed all that. In June of 1981, a small article appeared in the San Francisco Chronicle.
A mysterious outbreak of a sometimes fatal pneumonia among gay men has occurred in San Francisco and several...
It was only the first sign of things to come. Other stories published that summer described a rare form of cancer that was also striking gay men. The gay community reacted with skepticism.
First there was gay pneumonia, and then a few weeks later there was a story about gay cancer. And I thought, oh, come on, this is just a lot of hype.
Nobody paid it very much attention. Folks were still doing the same thing that they were doing in 1975. They were going to disco clubs, taking lots of drugs, and going home with sex partners and doing bathhouses in the parks and those things. In 1981, I mean, it wasn't an issue.
Really didn't connect with any experience that we had. Those who'd been sexually active knew that if there were a sexual disease you got the medicine, and that was that. It was not a big problem.
The pictures show the progression of how a few red bumps turn into the mark of Kaposi sarcoma. It's a rare cancer normally found in the elderly, but now it's striking young men, most of whom are gay, like Bobby Campbell. After 1 month, tests are still being done on the red bumps on his foot.
I don't know how I got it. I fit the profile, kind of the typical Kaposi's patient in my age, and that I'm gay, but I don't know how I got it.
Doctors here at UC Med Center still don't know either, but they're going all out to find an answer.
Research eventually proved AIDS to be sexually transmitted. Health officials claimed that sexual practices like anal intercourse were dangerous, and that having multiple sex partners heightened the risk for AIDS even more. With this news, bitter debate erupted within the gay community over how to stop the spread of AIDS.
People who were warning gay men that, the sexual habits had to change were denounced as traitors and Uncle Toms.
In early 1984, city officials and several gay activists moved to close San Francisco bathhouses. They charged that anonymous bathhouse sex helped spread AIDS. Sex is good. Sex is great. Bathhouse supporters countered that the baths were an important social institution where gay men could be educated about the disease.
All right, the matter will be submitted.
After a divisive court battle, a judge reopened the baths later that year on the condition that no unsafe sex be allowed. But by that time, the popularity of the baths was already in decline. The reality of AIDS was becoming clear.
It's a gradual process where there's a few initial reports, and then there's someone you've heard of once that was diagnosed, then there's a friend, then maybe a year later it got to the point where most gay men could say they knew someone who had died of AIDS. And then, of course, that changed everything.
By the time the 17th annual Gay Freedom Day rolled around in 1986, AIDS had been accepted as a fact of life. For gay men, a major part of accepting the epidemic meant dealing with a dramatic change in their sexual lifestyle. The era of casual, unsafe sex was gone. The era of safe sex had begun. The term safe sex was coined in 1983 by Bay Area Physicians for Human Rights and the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. The two groups drew up guidelines advising people how to avoid exposure to AIDS during sex. The guidelines divided sexual activities into 3 categories: safe, possibly safe, and unsafe. Pamphlets and posters circulated throughout the gay community to educate and encourage gay men to adopt safe sex practices as a means of preventing the spread of AIDS.
To be real blunt, gay men who haven't adapted safe sex are going to die. The truly accurate non-safe sex campaign should have been have safe sex or die.
Despite the grim warnings, change did not come easily.
I think there was resistance because our sexual freedom was being threatened. Part of it was the feeling about sexual politics, of we're liberated now, we have to hold on to that. We can't let people tell us not to be sexual.
But gradually, most gay men did make changes in their sexual practices, resulting in a dramatic decrease in the transmission of AIDS among gay men.
If you had said that I was into safe sex 2 to 3 years ago, you would have been laughed out of a bar. There was no agreement for that. Now it's the reverse. It's almost like if you're practicing unsafe, you're real quiet about it.
I began to be bombarded with a lot of information around safe sex. Certainly the only time I'd ever used condoms was when I was involved in heterosexual relationships. So that was something I had never done with another man.
It's really remarkable what's happened. There's so much more negotiation going on. People being honest, straightforward about what they will and won't do.
People are starting to be romantic, there's more dating. It forces you to talk to your partner instead of just going home and screwing. Now you have to ask.
Even if AIDS had not come along, we would have all been older. The influx to San Francisco has now matured and had reached points in their careers where they realized that it was time to give up the disco life and the recreational drugs and to settle down and to think about what they'd be doing when they were 50 or 60 years old.
For years, people talked about the gay community. Every politician up for re-election always talked about the gay community, but I don't think it was behaving as a community. The Castro Street area was behaving as an entertainment center, as a tourist spot, but now it truly is behaving as a community. There's bowling leagues, there's the choruses, there's bands, there's all these things that you have in any community. People don't go to bars to cruise and to pick up so much anymore as to make friends and have that extended social network.
Ready, and slow. Slow, quick, quick, turn, 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 slow.
The Rawhide Western Bar is part of that new social network. Free Western dance lessons are given every weeknight.
Slow, quick, quick, turn, 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 turn.
You go to the Rawhide, if somebody asks you to dance, you don't stand there with a lot of attitude. You say, yes, you're going to dance, because it's a symbol of friendship, not saying I want to take you home and sleep with you tonight. The focus on there is being friendly, but yet being close, doing that touch dancing, which is a way of getting warmth without necessarily being sexual. I don't think anything symbolizes the new gay community more than the Rawhide Bar.
Okay, that looked real nice.
Coping with AIDS and early death has changed the gay community in another way. It's strengthened the gay family.
Hi, Alan. Hi. How you doing? Pretty good. How are you? Good.
Most gay people in this city do not have their biological family nearby, but they do have their family that they've developed over the years, and I think they're realizing the importance of this group.
Thanks, and I'll see you later. Okay, see you in a little while.
I certainly have never seen it in medicine before, where friends just unconditionally come over and spend time with the patient, help them shop, help cook, take them all the way through the dying process.
Hi. So what you gonna make? I'll take that. Beef stew.
I have a friend who's dying right now, and his male friends have been as generous to him as anyone could imagine being. And I keep thinking to myself, how can they, we're watching our friend die.
For those with AIDS, these relationships offer crucial support. Bill Pope was diagnosed with AIDS in June 1984.
The people I live with right now, for example, insisted that I live with them when I was in the hospital and diagnosed. They earnestly and actively sought me out. They wanted me to be part of their family, and they have been. They've been incredibly wonderful and nice.
Instead of becoming a couple with somebody else living in the house with us, we really became a trio. We accepted social invitations together. When Michael and I were planning a weekend away, say a trip down to Disneyland or something, it was the three of us who were planning that, if he felt up to it.
We dealt with him not as a person who had AIDS. We dealt with him as a friend. We also had the luxury of being able to deal with him as a friend who realized that he was mortal. And at no point did we avoid the fact that he was going to die.
The hospital stays, the IVs, the medical tests, and the uncertainties have been hard to live with. But at the same time, I've realized that, as I always did, that life is precious and easily disrupted, and it's important that I use my time wisely. I no longer can think that I'll have time 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road to do the things that I've always wanted to do, so life is more immediate.
Bill Pope died in May of 1986. Friends and family gathered on a boat near Angel Island in San Francisco Bay to scatter his ashes.
I've thought that everything in my life has happened for a reason, and I'd like to think that this also is happening for a very special reason. There's a spirit that moves us and that motivates us. It's something that you can feel, it's real and tangible.
Realizing that his life was coming to an end wasn't all that hard. We were rather prepared for that. I think what we weren't prepared for was that horrible feeling of loss after he was gone. And we didn't realize that was going to affect us that hard.
It's a very sobering experience to have sickness and death a part of your life when you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s for that matter. And that's had a sobering effect on everything.
I know 13 people who were close to me, some of them who I was very intimately involved with, who have died from this disease. Sometimes I feel like I'm waiting on a line for my ticket, you know, because it'll be my turn soon.
I've lost two very dear friends, and I'm about to lose another. And these are people who are dying before the age of 40. It makes me feel like we're in a war, you know, where the young men are dying.
Almost 90% of the people with AIDS in this country are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, when your health and your career and your relationships are all supposed to be peaking. And bam, this hits you, and it gives you a renewed dose of self-hatred.
And I believe that when you live immorally, whether you're a heterosexual or a homosexual, when you violate the laws of God, and homosexuality does, you become wide open to every kind of sin and sickness and health.
You're kind of bucking the system when you're expressing your sexuality in this country. So when you have people like Falwell who are telling you that you're paying the price for being gay, you know, a lot of people all of a sudden start to back down and go, God, well, maybe I am paying the price for being gay.
People have been so destroyed psychologically. They have lost so many people. They themselves feel so at risk that an awful lot of gay men are just retreating as a defense.
If you're gay and living in San Francisco, you live with the reality, the truth, that within the next few years, 1 in 4 of your friends are probably going to die. You're living in an entirely different world than straight people. And there's no way I can explain it to them, you know, what it's like wondering which one of your friends is going to die next and go through this hideous and brutal death, or whether it's going to be yourself.
While the gay community in San Francisco has been battered both physically and psychologically by the epidemic, it has also been mobilized by it. This 10-kilometer race held in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park was sponsored by a local gay running club to raise money in the fight against AIDS. The race is typical of the events taking place throughout the community.
People are looking into their souls to see what kind of contribution they can make. More people are involved now than I've ever seen. More people are donating time, donating money, whatever their talents may be.
Every Thursday evening in the auditorium of this San Francisco Catholic Church, several hundred gay and straight gather to play bingo. For $10, players receive 10 cards, good for an entire evening's play. Hundreds are given away in prizes, and hundreds more are raised for the Coming Home Hospice, a hospice for those dying from AIDS.
It represents something positive that we can do as an attempt to respond to the crisis. It gives a lot of the volunteers, there's 30 volunteers, some feeling that they're doing something positive in reaction. Most of the people that attend our bingo come because of where the money is going for. Plus, it's a fun time. We try to make it a happy environment for them, somewhere where they can have a good time and get away from their worries.
063. It's about being responsible for our lives. We can't wait for somebody in Washington to cure this epidemic for us.
The fear I had before getting involved in helping was overwhelming my life. It was like sometimes you don't have hope to go on. And getting involved with this, and you see these wonderful people that are so giving of their time and efforts, it's been very uplifting. If you sit back passively and let it overwhelm you, you're a victim of AIDS without having it.
Gay men are not alone in their volunteer efforts. Lesbians, though not in a high-risk group for AIDS, have made a significant contribution. This is somewhat surprising since past relations between the city's gay men and lesbians had often been strained, a reflection of different social needs and political priorities.
Also, there is an AIDS Foundation table, and if you don't know, we are collecting food. You can make food donations.
But now, the lesbian community's efforts against AIDS can even be seen at events like this women's music concert. Most past differences seem to have been set aside as the entire community copes with AIDS.
Women have really, really done a lot to support the men in this community. Most of the social services that I see are staffed greatly by numbers of women, and I think we've very much been there.
I think a number of gay men learned how to deal with AIDS through their conversations and the relationships with women. They learned how to cope with their feelings better, to accept their feelings. I think the contribution of lesbians has been enormous.
It only takes one person that you know to fall victim to this disease, and you instantly appreciate what a devastation it is, how wrong it is to just let it happen and not try and do something about it.
Making sure justice is done.
San Francisco AIDS Foundation. George speaking. May I help you?
One typical San Francisco AIDS organization that involves both lesbians and gay men is the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. Staffed largely by volunteers, this organization provides an AIDS hotline, distributes educational information, and runs this food bank for AIDS patients. The foundation is just one part of San Francisco's extensive network of AIDS services.
One of the reasons I believe why San Francisco's seen or developed into what is called the model city for its AIDS response is that there were so many openly gay people in positions of influence, not just in city government, but throughout the whole institutional structure. So that means banks, insurance companies, realtors. People were able to mobilize. They were in positions to generate interest, attention, to do fundraising, and they're still able to do that.
Not only has the gay community had to mobilize to fight the ravages of the AIDS epidemic, it's also mobilized to fight the political backlash that's resulted.
You've had the Supreme Court come out against you, say you don't have a right to have sex. You've got the administration squarely against you. And then you've got this horrible epidemic that's breathing down your neck and is going to kill off a lot of your friends. AIDS is an issue for gay people much of the same dimension that nuclear war is for straight people. It is the one issue that renders all other issues irrelevant. If you're dead, gay civil rights doesn't matter.
Some even say that AIDS has brought new fire to a stumbling movement.
Well, I'm not sure that the movement would have fizzled out, but I think that certainly AIDS has, in a sense, strengthened the gay movement because it has brought new people and new resources in. But I think the central thing is that it's changed the focus. The gay movement, essentially, until AIDS, dealt with government by saying we want to get rid of it. We don't want the government to interfere with us. AIDS has changed this because now one has to deal with the state.
We have to organize, organize, organize.
One wants things in a very big way from government. And that, I think, has led to a different sort of gay movement. It's more bureaucratic, it's more structured, it's more respectable, you know, in traditional white collar, tie and suit ways.
Register to vote here.
This more bureaucratic side of gay politics has been out in force, developing strategies to battle the epidemic and its political fallout. Issues like quarantine and involuntary AIDS testing.
Come out! Come out! Come out! Come out!
AIDS has crossed all boundaries in the community. It's tended to politicize people because we're fighting for our lives.
We must be stronger than ever before. And
While AIDS has served as a dramatic unifying force within the gay community, critical divisions remain.
The outreach to provide the message of AIDS has not focused on the minority communities in San Francisco. It's kind of like, we don't actively discriminate, we just don't include you.
I think the greatest single problem has been the way in which blacks and Latinos and Asians have not been basically involved. The leadership around AIDS is almost exclusively white.
Most of the support programs certainly were conceived and basically put forth to do education and prevention and to be support services for gay white men. What has happened is, you know, we're trying to play catch up now.
Like gay minorities in the community, those with AIDS have seen some of their needs overlooked. As a result, they've mobilized direct political actions of their own, calling themselves PWAs, or Persons with AIDS. Whether through civil disobedience at this AIDS Arc Vigil, or traditional stumping at the Memorial Day Candlelight March, people with AIDS have formed a crucial part of the community's fight against the disease. With no end to the epidemic in sight, this fight is destined to continue for some time. And though the public's concern is growing as AIDS spreads beyond the gay community, it seems likely gays will continue to bear much of the burden.
We have talked for years about being teachers, and that's what we have become. We have taken responsibility for ourselves, particularly in the face of a crisis, in a world where most of the cases of AIDS is in the heterosexual population. We have set the standards for care and support. We will soon be teaching others.
Dr. Tom Waddell, a former Olympic decathlete, founded the Gay Games in 1982 as an expression of gay pride and camaraderie. He died of AIDS in June of 1987, leaving the Games behind as his legacy. It is a legacy which, to many, symbolizes the strength, spirit, and hope that remains.